Today we're covering emergency behavior intervention and the ACES connection. We're going to learn about the therapeutic approaches to address behavioral issues in children who have experienced traumatic or adverse childhood experiences. If you look at the graph in the middle of the page, it kind of shows you the behavior escalation of a kiddo. They start out calm. There is a trigger which causes the child to become frustrated. There's agitation, acceleration, a peak, or the area where the child really does scream, holler, throw a fit, misbehave, throw things, that kind of thing, get in a fight. And then there is the wind down or de-escalation phase where they're starting to calm down, and then the recovery phase. And the recovery phase, of course, is where we try to communicate to the child or teen about the behavior outbursts that they experienced, and we try to learn how to handle those things differently. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences that may have an impact on a youth's lifelong learning, health, and career outcomes. Kids with ACEs may exhibit signs of toxic stress in school and in the shelter environment in response to certain events or stimuli. Successful learning outcomes depend on recognizing the signs and de-escalating the situation so that youth can concentrate and absorb instructions. Looking at the chart, you'll see that we have conventional and expanded ACEs. Conventional ACEs are those that immediately surround the youth, such as household dysfunction, abuse, and neglect. Household dysfunction can include anything from mental illness of a family member or the youth, incarcerated relatives, interpersonal violence, substance abuse, even divorce and separation. Neglect can include both physical neglect and emotional neglect. Abuse can be physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. Our expanded ACEs cover bullying, bullying in the shelter environment, bullying at school. It can also cover community violence. If the children are living in an area where there's a lot of domestic violence and or gang violence or just violence in general. Neighborhood safety, that goes back to are they living in poverty? Are they living in a neighborhood that is a safe environment or not a safe environment? Racism. Young people can be in a situation where they're not in a culturally sensitive space, and that can become harmful to them. And then, of course, living in foster care. Living in foster care covers a wide dynamic from just experiencing the household dysfunction, neglect, and abuse in the conventional ACEs to the constant changing of a foster environment, not having consistent people in your life with their caseworkers and case managers changing frequently, having to move around from foster home to facility, things along those lines. Also having to move away from your home of origin and having to go somewhere else to live in a foster home that can care for you in a different town or community. Living in foster care, also, you have to live with people who have different values than you sometimes, or different beliefs than you, and so that makes it a little bit challenging. And also, sometimes you don't get to visit your family, or your family's rights may have been terminated, so you lose contact with all your family. So there's a lot of components to living in foster care that would cause a higher sense of ACEs or ACEs scores in the youth. Now it's time to stop and think how to discipline a foster child who has trauma. Disciplining foster youth who enter our shelter system may have been through a significant amount of trauma that has stemmed from abuse or neglect or any other situation that may have impacted their lives in an unhealthy way from their biological family or a foster home or a shelter or a GRO or an RTC. Those youth in foster care need to know that what healthy or positive discipline is, and understanding that the purpose that we have here is not to punish them, but to teach them new skills, prepare them for the world around them, and to ensure that they have the skills they need before they age out of the foster care system. Some children genuinely lack the problem-solving skills that they need, or appropriate coping mechanisms and emotional regulation. So when we pair this with a child who lives in foster care and that uncertainty, the behaviors can increase in severity and frequency. A behavior plan may be needed to be created, and if we do so, we also involve the child in creating the plan. That it usually involves our case manager, their caseworker, or case manager from To Engage, Empower, Child Protective Services, or wherever, and then also sometimes our staff or the children's parents, our counselors. It can involve a lot of people, and our goal, again, is not to punish the child, but to set up a behavior plan to help them identify their calmers and triggers and to work with them to improve their behavior in a positive way. Now let's go over the impact of ACEs on behavior. Children exposed to ACEs are more likely to exhibit behavior problems like aggression, anxiety, depression, difficulty with social interactions, poor academic performance due to the stress and trauma they've experienced. So, our goals of intervention should be behavior interventions that aim to mitigate the negative effects of the ACEs by teaching the children or teens healthy coping mechanisms, emotional regulation skills, and positive problem-solving strategies to manage their stress and improve their overall well-being. So what are some examples of emergency behavior interventions for ACEs? Well, in therapy, they may use cognitive behavioral therapy. It helps the children identify and challenge negative thoughts and beliefs by replacing them with more positive ones, useful for managing anxiety and depression. Again, this would be handled in the counseling process. We also have play therapy. It uses play as a therapeutic tool to help children express their emotions and experience it in a safe and supportive environment. Now, this can be done in counseling, but it also can be just done in the shelter environment, where we use play as a form of stress relief. We can also teach children through role modeling healthy ways to cope with anger and frustration in a fun way through exercise or movement and things along those lines. Parent and youth care training programs. And so youth care would be our direct care employees and staff. So we need to educate caregivers and parents or guardians on how to provide a nurturing and supportive home environment, to set appropriate limits, and to respond effectively to the child's needs. And so a big thing for children is being heard and being seen and making sure that you get what they are feeling. And so through the training programs that we offer, we teach a lot of active listening and a lot of reflective statements to make sure that you can identify what the child is trying to convey in the appropriate manner so we can get their needs met in a healthy way. Another thing would be social skills training, where we teach children how to interact appropriately with their peers to resolve conflicts peacefully and build healthy relationships. Now, this can be done in a counseling format, but it also can be done just in a shelter format by teaching appropriate interactions, verbal interactions with one another, and understanding the healthy boundaries we have of personal space. Like, we talk to kids about, staying out of people's bubble, out of their area, allowing everybody to have that same comfort space and that they need to have autonomy so they don't feel threatened in any way. And another one would be mindful practices. Mindful practices help children learn to focus on the present moment and manage their emotions through techniques like deep breathing and relaxation exercises. This may even include meditation. There are some important considerations when working with children who have experienced high ACEs. Trauma-informed care. When we hire our employees, we often go through trauma-informed care training, not only on the DFPS website, but also on the NTCT website, and we learn about the different impacts that trauma has on the brain and on human development. So trauma-informed care is a holistic approach that recognizes the importance of trauma and incorporates strategies to create a safe and supportive environment for youth. Another key component would be early intervention. Addressing behavioral issues early on can significantly improve the outcomes for children exposed to ACEs. This is an early intervention would be making sure that all the children understand our behavior rules, all the children understand the schedule that we have to follow, that consistency that we have with our youth, and also making sure that they get established in meeting other new children and other coworkers so they don't feel lost in the shuffle. And we're also being alert or aware of any form of bullying or any form of conflicts that the children may have with one another, so we can address those quickly and effectively and get that done through early intervention. Collaboration with caregivers. Involving parents and/or caregivers in the intervention process is crucial to ensuring consistency and support at home. Collaboration with caregivers is being consistent on shift, following the same schedule, following the same guidelines, asking a coworker for help if you're not reaching a child, and trying to work hard to follow all the same rules that we have to follow. Same guidelines, same time frames, and it's not just about following the rules, it's following our routine and our schedules. As long as you're doing that, you're giving that child that sense of safety and security. And you're being a team player. Being a team player is essential for the kids to function. Individualized treatment plans, which is recognizing that each child's experience is unique and their needs are unique, and we need to tailor our interventions to that child's behavioral needs, and that's essential in working with these kiddos. So, for instance, we often talked about children who have tactile issues, or we have a child who likes to smell things, and so those are just some of the things we've recently talked about as a staff. And so, knowing those things ahead of time and allowing us to communicate with one another as a team, how to better serve that kiddo during this process, we individualize their treatment plan for their needs. Some kiddos have trouble going to sleep, some kiddos have trouble transitioning, and some kids just have quirky behavior. And so we have to communicate that during our treatment team meetings and with one another so we know how to better work with and or serve the youth that we're taking care of. So what does this look like? How do we reduce the effects of ACEs and toxic stress on the kids to help them from a behavior management standpoint? Well, the best way is to respond to the child's ACEs. If possible, prevention of ACEs is best. In addition, you can do the following things. Tune in and learn your child's signals. Help your child calm down when they sense that they are stressed or scared. Soothe the child and teach them ways to calm down when they're feeling upset. Watch your tone and your inflection when you talk with the youth. Volume control. Keep a calm environment. It's hard for us to keep the children safe and calm and functional when they are overstimulated. Again, we don't need the TV going and the radio going and musical chairs going in one room while somebody else is trying to read a book in the other room. So we've got to really plan our activities and our groups so we're not bothering one another and we're all given those individualized attentions so we can help guide them on how to behave in the right manner. Talking and playing with our children. Toddlers and children who are academically and or socially behind thrive on hugs and shared stories and songs and daily routines. That consistency again. These actions can help children feel seen, heard, and understood. Always allow children the opportunity to talk things out while you're not interrupting them. Then repeat back what they said that you heard and ask them if you heard them correctly. Make sure you get clarity. Children really like it when they feel that you've listened to their problem. Focus on managing your own stress. This can be very helpful. You better adjust the way these feelings impact how you respond to the children. Having a calm parent or care provider will protect the children during periods of high stress. It's hard for us to keep them calm if we're not being calm. It's important to stick to daily routines, following our schedules, following our behavioral rules and what's expected. When they get up at a certain time, eat at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time. If we do our life skills on the 7 to 3 shift and the 3 to 11 shift, if we do recreation time on the 7 to 3 shift on the 3 to 11 shift, all those consistent factors help a child feel comfortable. That even boils down to like recreation time, free time, really scheduling those things almost down to the detail. Help children know what's happening next, which can reduce their stress. They can focus on managing their own stress because the time schedule that we're giving them is very predictable. This can help you better adjust the way the feelings impact how they respond to our children. Having a calm staff will help protect your children or our children in the agency during periods of high stress. We need to have the kids exercise regularly. That's why we have the right track, the gym, the playground. Just having free time out there running around is not always beneficial for the kids because they'll get in fights. Anytime they're getting into fights or getting rowdy, it's because we're not controlling the environment at a high enough level. They need more control. They need more consistency from us. That's what they're asking for when they misbehave. So scheduling kids to go around the right track and spacing them out. Once we get our signs in place, going over those lesson plans at the same time would be great. Even in the playground, challenging young people to do different things at different times on intervals and not having them just all run and do one activity together is much more controlled. It would be great if it's usually 1 hour on each awake shift, so that's 7 to 3, 3 to 11, if we can have like 60 minutes of exercise on each shift. We could even Google things like youth yoga and things like that that are for kiddos that's age appropriate, things like that lines, or playing kickball, doing some of those fun outdoor things that we can do with kiddos. On really bad weather days, we could even do chair yoga, or we could do musical chairs, things that are physical yet still controlled. Helping our youth eat well. We have some of the best cooks. Shout out to our cooks. They have wonderful nutritious food to help our kiddos grow and develop properly. Good nutrition builds brain health and protects our body. Good fruits and vegetables and proteins at snack time and help us avoid junk food, make us adjust better. Kiddos who have the fuel for their body have a better ability to cope to different life stressors. Mealtime is a great opportunity also for active communication by checking in on how the kids are doing, getting more acquainted with their interests and what's going on with them. Remember, we eat all of our meals with the kiddos, so stay with your group, eat your meal at the same time that the child eats their meal, and open that table time conversation up to, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite teacher? Just asking some of those questions just to learn more about them. What's their favorite subject? And to encourage them to try new things and to try to have a positive attitude. Ensuring also that our kids get adequate sleep. Sleep gives the body time to grow, recharge, and heal, and children who get adequate sleep manage stress more easily. So on that 11 to 7 shift, this is crucial that we allow the children to get enough sleep so we're not being noisy. We're not being noisy with our words or our body movements. We're taking our adequate bed checks on them, but we're not stressing them out and making them wake up. And we are making sure that they feel safe and comfortable. And then we wake them up in the morning with a positive attitude. If they were to have a nightmare or something like that, we don't just tell them to shut up and go back to bed, because that's not therapeutic. We would ask them what's wrong, comfort them, listen to what they have to say, and then reassure them that they're safe here in the shelter, and that you're monitoring them, and that you're there to keep them safe on the nighttime hauls, and allowing them that opportunity to go back to bed. So that's very, very important. We can even take some additional steps. We can encourage our youth to participate in counseling to reduce their stress and seek solutions to things that bothered them. They literally can go to counseling and hate it and get nothing from it. Or we can encourage them to go to counseling, to take the opportunity to visit with the counselor, and they can talk about stress. They can talk about old stress from before they came to the shelter. They can talk about stress within the shelter, and they can talk about stress in the school setting. It gives them that opportunity for healthy, positive feedback, and possibly some cognitive behavior therapy or things along those lines to help them adjust their anxiety and stress level. We can also practice being in the moment. Try breathing and meditation. It can help the body manage stress. You know, when kiddos are really, really frustrated, sometimes I tell them to take a big breath like a dragon. You know, breathe in through your nose and then breathe out through your mouth, and try to get it to where you can count to 5 slowly, both ways. Sometimes it's good to do a thing called square breathing. Square breathing is where you would draw a line with your finger, and as you draw the wall side up, you would take in a deep breath, and as you cross over the top, you would breathe out. As you draw the line down to make the other wall side, you would breathe in, and as you close the box over to the base, to the next wall side, you would breathe in again. So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, in the form of a square. And again, you try to pace it for about 3 to 5 seconds. We also need to talk to our kiddos about talking to their case managers, and if we notice that their children's ACEs are really, really high and we think they're affecting their health, we need to talk to the case managers with the children and find out what we can do about it. Because sometimes children can get what we call psychosomatic illnesses, where they just feel genuinely sick. Their tummy hurts, their head hurts, everything hurts. There's no physical, realistic explanation for it other than they're just stressed out and they can't handle the situation. So whenever we see high ACEs in a youth, be sure and talk to our case managers and tell them what you see, what's going on with the kiddos, or what you hear the children saying. What are some positive behavior intervention strategies in these situations? A child with challenging behavior should have positive behavior interventions, including in their service plan, to help them reduce challenging behaviors and support the new behavioral skills they need to be learned through their treatment goals. These interventions should be specific strategies that are positive and proactive and are not reactive and consequence-based. Again, let's repeat that sentence. These interventions should be specific strategies that are positive and proactive and not reactive and consequent-based. So if we were doing prevention, we could catch a lot of behavioral outbursts before they occur. We could be preventative by making sure that our environment was well organized, our schedules were well organized and followed, that we follow the behavior rules, that we follow our schedules and guidelines for what we need to be doing when we need to be doing it. That eliminates a lot of those external stressors. Also by teaching the children to take turns and teaching the children to be leaders within the building on doing different activities and things, like having somebody help pick up, having somebody help pick things out, have somebody help set the table. Different aspects of that can allow the young people to have a sense of more control in their lives. Following lists. The following list suggests different kinds of positive behavioral interventions that can be useful. Okay, number 1, and we've talked about this multiple times, clear routines and expectations that are posted and reviewed help the children know what comes next in their school day, shelter day, during our schedule here in the shelters. It helps reduce anxiety and fear. So they're going to be posted after this training. We're going to make sure that they're posted so staff and the children know how to follow the schedule. Not everything can be concrete, like activities will change on a daily basis. Crafts will change on a daily basis. Sometimes we're going on an outing, sometimes we're not. But as long as we're openly discussing this with the children in our group on our shift, then no surprises are left there for them to worry about. Number 2, stop, relax, and think. Strategy. It teaches our children how to think about a problem and find a solution. Children learn it by following a set of steps, okay? Number 1 is to define the problem. So stop, relax, and think means to, number 1, stop, and then relax a minute, and then it's time to think. When it's time to think, we need to define the problem. What is our problem? Decide who owns the problem. Is it my problem and it's because of my behavior? Is it a problem that somebody else is having and I want to interfere with that? Where does the problem really belong? Think of as many solutions as possible to solve the problem. Write them down even. So you can get a piece of paper and you can write number 1 and you can write, what is the problem? Number 2, write down who owns the problem. Is it my problem? Is it an agency problem? Is it somebody else's problem? Is it a school problem? Whose problem is it? What is that problem and who does it belong to? And then what are our solutions? So you write down different types of solutions. In order to select a solution to try, allow the young people to kind of evaluate the solutions that they've written down. And then they can try one of them. Use that solution. So pick one of your solutions and use it. Then evaluate, was it effective? Did it work? And if not, go back to the original list of solutions and try a new one. And then, of course, then go over the strategies to see, was it effective or was it not effective? So after each child understands the steps, role play and practice can help the process become a habit. Helping children recognize their own response to stress, like clenched hands, tone of voice, etc. It may become part of their instruction needed to use this strategy effectively. Practicing and being successful with these steps can take time for kids. It doesn't happen overnight. Therefore, it's important to consider what kind of support a young person may need, and then we can help reinforce that process and that progress. Number 3, prearranged signals can be used to let a child know when he or she is doing something that is not acceptable. It's simple as a hand motion, a nod of the head, or a shake of the head. It reminds me of like a colored place card put on a desk as a teacher moves through the room that could alert the child without drawing attention to them that their child needs to modify their behavior. Like, in school they have like a red card, a green card, and a yellow card. And so if they have to pull a card, that kind of thing. So this prearranged signal lets them know, hey, you're starting to escalate, let's bring that down a notch. So it's important to develop a signal that the child can help establish is recognizable to them, and the staff agree that they will recognize that symbol and use it. Then they follow that to help a child identify when they're about to lose control and the behaviors are not where they need to be. Another one, number 4, is proximity control. Sometimes this is really important when kids are kind of being frustrating in the dining room or in the art room or game room or somewhere like that, or in the living room, and they're starting to get mouthy, like a teacher or an adult, a staff member moves closer to the child in a gentle way. You're not moving quickly, you're not hovering them, but you are giving them some cues that you're standing there and you can hear their conversation and they need to change that conversation, or they need to quit fighting and they need to share and do things differently. So just making yourself more present, more visible, sometimes that in and of itself can control a behavior. Also, we can have planned response method. A planned response method is useful for stopping non-serious behaviors that are bothersome to other children and adults nearby. For example, kids who interrupt the activities in the shelter to get attention. Their goal is to misbehave so they can get attention and be the center of attention in the room. So a planned response method acknowledges that the children's challenging behaviors serve a purpose. They want attention. They feel left out of the group. So if the purpose of the behavior is to gain adult attention, then not providing attention means that the behavior does not work. So the behavior lessens over time and eventually disappears. Now, sometimes if you ignore their behavior, it doesn't go away. And sometimes they escalate it. So then you would have to address it, because then they'll throw a temper tantrum for more attention. So many adults find it difficult to ignore behaviors, especially if the behaviors interrupt what the adult is doing. Also, attention-seeking behaviors also often get worse before they eventually go away. So we've got to realize that. Planned response method is not suitable for behaviors that are extremely disruptive or dangerous. This method may also not work with children that laugh at the problem behaviors the adult is trying to ignore. Some behaviors, including those that are unsafe or that include peer issues such as arguing, can grow quickly into more serious behaviors. It may not be possible to ignore these kind of behaviors. The process of ignoring behaviors should never be used for unsafe behaviors. That's where staff have to intervene. There is no ignoring unsafe behaviors. So as children grow older and want attention more from their friends than from adults, the planned response method becomes less useful. 6. Discipline privately. Many children see it as a challenge when staff attempt to discipline them in front of their peers. Children rarely lose these challenges, even when adults use negative consequences. Young people can gain stature from peers by publicly refusing to obey staff. A child is more likely to accept discipline if his peers are not always watching them. So encouraging the young person to come up to the side of the area. So if we're in the living room, go to the dining room, something like that. Or ask them if they're on the playground to move away and go up more towards the porch where another staff can hear you, and both of you verbally redirect the child without the other children being in earshot. Find an opportunity for the child to help others. For example, children who is using negative behaviors as a way to get out of an activity or doing a task of running an errand, for the staff, up to like the administrative office, peer involvement in another way can motivate appropriate behavior. Finding times for the child who uses disruptive behavior to get attention from his peers or her peers is another way to positively engage the young person and build rapport. Positive phrasing lets the children know that the positive results for using appropriate behaviors, which is basically complimenting a kid or praising a kid. As simple as it sounds, this can be difficult. Staff, even parents, are used to focusing on bad behavior. Teachers are focusing on bad behavior. So warning children about negative responses to problem behaviors often seems like an easier way of describing the positive impact of the positive behaviors, but it's not. So compare the difference between the following phrases, okay? The following negative phrases. If we were positive phrasing something, we would say to a kid, if you finish your homework or reading by the time it is for us to go outside, we can all go out and play a game together. Negative phrasing would be, if you don't finish your reading by the time it's time to go outside, you're going to have to stay inside until it's done. So do you see the difference between the two examples? State the behavior you want to see. For example, I like seeing how everyone lines up so quickly and quietly instead of stop bothering the other kiddos in line, or your peers in line. So rather than yelling at them for not getting in line appropriately, compliment them and acknowledge the fact when they line up so quickly as they're trying to line up, so they can hear that positive statement rather than a negative statement. Behavior shaping acknowledges that not all children can do everything at 100%, okay? Everybody functions at a different level, and some days somebody might have an off day. So if a child does not turn in a paper to us from their activities, or if they're not following rules exactly, then 100% of the time, we don't need to think that that's not realistic. I mean, if they clean their room to the best of their ability, but it's not excellent, we need to acknowledge that. If they clean their space, but it's not excellent, we need to acknowledge that. If they sit during an activity they hate, but they're not disrupting everybody, we need to acknowledge that. By rewarding small gains and reinforcing these gains as they occur, kids will learn how to stick with a task and to improve the skill. We also have a tangible and active token system or reinforcers. Remember, we get 1 token per shift per direct care staff that's monitoring that group. So a child can earn a maximum of 3 tokens per day. Remember to talk about the token system. Remember that it's tangible. Remember that it's an activity reinforcer, and try to encourage kiddos at the end of each day to know that they've earned a token. Tokens are also an effective way to encourage and support appropriate behavior. Tangible reinforcers can be rewards, edibles, and even objects, or like toys, that kind of thing. Token reinforcers are tokens or points given for an appropriate behavior that can be exchanged for something of value. So these coins, they can cash them in our prize room to buy something that they really want. Activity reinforcers are probably the most effective and positive, as they allow young people to participate in preferred activities, usually with their peers, which also builds social reinforcement. So they're all socially reinforced because they all want to earn a token. And they earn 1 token per shift, up to 3 tokens per day. Then they can cash them in. So not only do they earn a token for good behavior, but they also can learn budgeting and how to plan ahead and goal set to winning a greater prize. But it's not effective unless staff talk about it and they're consistent with it. It is a great behavior modifier if you use it effectively. Strategies to address challenging behaviors. As we talked about early, intervene early in the acting out cycle. Now let's look at this picture. Calm, trigger, agitation, acceleration, peak, de-escalation, and recovery. Where should we intervene? At the trigger. We need to know the triggers so we can help children avoid them. But if we are not able to prevent them from being exposed to the trigger, then we need to intervene at agitation. Once we've hit the peak, it's already too late. So prevention, actually, we need to focus on recognizing the trigger to avoid it, or once triggered, how to calm down from agitation, not to go to acceleration or the peak, and then to go straight to the recovery period and to talk about the problem. Prevent challenging behaviors from escalating. So that acceleration point, we do not want challenging behaviors to go through the acceleration or escalating process. So if we're able to deter that, then we are going to be able to manage the behavior in the future. Successfully managing challenging behaviors in the future does require, during the de-escalation process, for young people to calm down, maybe clean up a mess, maybe have some time to breathe, get a cool drink of water, things along those lines. And then during the recovery process, we actually have to go back and talk about why we misbehaved, what was the trigger, what caused the outburst, and how can we do things differently. Then we put that in their behavior treatment plan with their case managers and our coworkers and staff. What are some adult responses that de-escalate or prevent intense behaviors from occurring? Ensuring your response to the youth is culturally responsive. Utilize cultural responsive problem solving to improve your understanding of how to identify and respond to an individual student's culture and norms. So making sure that we don't do anything that would offend them. Limit the number of individuals interacting with the student or the youth. The adult with the best relationship with the kiddo should be communicating and providing support. If they're mad at a staff member, you're going to have to swap your staff members out because that's not going to be effective. But you also don't want to take the power away from that other staff member. So you're going to have a neutral staff member negotiate the problem between the staff member and the youth who are currently in a disagreement. So they need to provide that support. Model calm behavior through your breath, your nonverbal expression, your self-talk, your tone of voice, and your use of calming strategies. The more upset the young person becomes, the calmer the adult needs to become. So literally, if all the kids are freaking out, we cannot also be freaking out. Staff can't be screaming and yelling and crying and being hysterical or whining. Staff need to be focused, be the adults, be the leaders, and to get control of the environment in a non-confrontational, non-restraint way. We need to wait for a later time to discuss the behavior of the student or the youth if the situation is too hot. Like if they're really, really mad, you have to let them cool down before you have the conversation. So only after everyone is calm and back in their rational state of mind should there be any discussion. Pre-teach prior to a young person escalating how to self-monitor their tension levels and their use of regulation strategies for alleviating tension. So like breathing techniques, calming techniques, meditation techniques. Sometimes I even draw that graph from the previous page. It kind of looks somewhat like a volcano. And so we need the young people to identify their triggers which build up at the base of the volcano before it erupts. So having them sometimes fill out that kind of worksheet helps. This instruction cannot take the place during an incident of heightened emotions. So literally, a pre-taught situation, when you're in the heat of the moment, it's not going to kick in because the heightened emotion is going to supersede their actions and going to take over their behaviors. So we need to know how to be able to implement the youth's calmers. They've identified them on their intake sheet, and if they haven't, we need to be sure and go back and identify them with them. Follow the specific responses or accommodations that we have established for them in a treatment team meeting if they have frequent outbursts. We need to be sure and pause and engage in active listening to show that we are listening to the youth and that we understand and respect what they're feeling at this time, even if it doesn't make sense to us. We've got to listen to what they're saying and somehow have them help make that of what they are complaining about or heard or expressed to us into a way that can control their behaviors. We've got to get them to take some ownership, some accountability, and to help us identify how to calm them down in the future. Always validate a youth's feelings. Use language that validates the feelings and not the child's behavior. Validating a youth's feelings does not mean you validate their behavior. Since we are talking about the kiddos and their feelings, be sure and be sincere in trying to resolve the situation through your words and actions, and make sure they are consistent. Ignore any challenging questions from the youth and focus only on working with the youth towards a calmer solution. Use a calm, clear, respectful, and non-emotional tone of voice. Non-blaming, non-judgmental. Also watch your nonverbal body language. Stand at an angle to the youth that is less threatening than directly facing them. Don't stand directly in front of them like mirroring their behavior. Kind of turn to the side. Stand at an angle to the young person. This is less threatening and then directly facing them. Use a non-confrontational stance, arms to your side, relaxed in posture, neutral face when approaching a young person who's agitated, and consider whether approaching a student or backing away is the best option. Honor the young person's personal space and use caution when considering physical contact with the student. Again, we do not do any form of restraints. Sometimes a kid may say they want to hold your hand, or sometimes a kid may say, I'm so frustrated I need a hug. They're going to say those things. But you yourself should not reach out and try to touch them in any way because you've got to make sure that nothing can be considered that you're trying to restrain the child. For some kiddos, what an adult perceives as a reassuring touch on the shoulder or an attempt to calm them down may feel threatening and actually escalate the behavior. So that's why we don't touch the kiddos. And also, again, we're a non-restraint facility. Be sure and use your body language and your words to prompt that we need to reduce tension in the communication that we've got going on with the kiddos. Communicate support and provide calm redirection. Know and follow your agency's or our agency's policy related to contacting the police or emergency services. Remember, you got to get an administrator's permission to call the police or to use emergency services. We don't want to disempower the children, and we also don't want to scare them with law enforcement. We want to teach them that law enforcement's here to help us, not to hurt us. So we need to engage in self-care when we are stressed. We need to address our own needs and avoid burnout. Adults are only able to support their kiddos that we watch and take care of on a social and emotional level when they are able to support their own needs. So do not ignore your signs of burnout. Increased anxiety or other mental health warning signs that you may be experiencing. Seek help from your colleagues, our administrators, or professional organizations such as a counseling program, MHMR, something along those lines, medical professionals, family, friends, and others when you yourself feel stressed and burnout. Reflection and application activities. Now let's think together. Have you used any of these strategies with our youth? What were the outcomes or results? Is there anything you would do differently in the same situation with a youth if it were to occur again? Is there a strategy missing from this list that you have found to be effective in de-escalating a youth? Is there a strategy you have used but have not found to be effective in de-escalating a child? Why do you think the strategy was not effective? What training or support for the agency staff may be needed right now? How do you know if you're using the strategy effectively? And what role does culturally responsive problem solving and culturally responsive practice have on effective de-escalation strategies?